Where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Courage and Fur for more amazing dog stories. The sun, a warm benediction, dappled through the old maple trees, casting shifting patterns on the grounds of Maplewood Elementary. It was a day designed for pure joy, a vibrant canvas, painted with the sounds of children's laughter, the sweet scent of fresh-baked cookies wafting from the cafeteria, and the excited chatter of families gathered for the annual Community Appreciation Day. This wasn't just a school, it was the beating heart of the neighborhood, a place where everyone felt a sense of belonging, a fortress of safety and connection. In the midst of this joyful chaos stood Officer David Jenkins, a man whose kind eyes belied the steel of his profession, and by his side, his loyal partner Max. Max wasn't just a canine, he was a magnificent Labrador. A blur of golden fur and boundless energy, his tail a constant rhythm against Officer Jenkins's leg. Their bond transcended words, forged in countless hours of training and cemented by an unspoken understanding that ran deeper than any human language. I remember once, during a routine sweep, Max suddenly stopped dead, nudging at a pile of discarded textbooks. Officer Jenkins thought nothing of it, until Max's insistent whining led him to a forgotten teddy bear, tucked away and clearly missed. A small thing, yes, but it was moments like these that hinted at a wisdom, a perceptive power, far beyond what met the eye. Today, Max was the star of the show. Kids flocked to him, their small hands reaching out to stroke his soft fur, their faces alight with pure adoration. He accepted their attention with a gentle dignity, his tail wagging a steady rhythm, a picture of happy, playful loyalty. Officer Jenkins demonstrated Max's impressive skills, a flawless retrieve, a perfectly executed sit-stay. Each command met with delighted applause from the crowd. But as the lunch bell echoed across the lawn, signaling the shift from games to grub, a subtle change rippled through the air. The comforting aroma of cafeteria food filled the space, the familiar comfort of warm rolls and simmering sauces. For Max, however, amidst the familiar, something felt chillingly discordant. Officer Jenkins, attuned to his partner, noticed the almost imperceptible shift. Max's ears, once playfully perked, now swiveled, with a newfound intense focus. A tremor, almost imperceptible to anyone else, vibrated deep in Max's chest, a silent alarm that made Officer Jenkins's own blood run cold, a premonition that something sacred was about to be defiled. It begged a question that would haunt the community for weeks. What if the greatest dangers aren't always loud, crashing events? What if they are insidious whispers, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone or something to finally hear? The cafeteria, moments before, had been a symphony of childish exuberance. Now, as the lunch line snaked its way toward the steam tables, the joyous hum was abruptly shattered. Max, a playful celebrity only moments ago, transformed. His body tensed, a rigid statue of golden fur. His nose twitched, not with playful curiosity, but with an almost violent discernment, like a finely tuned instrument hitting a discordant note. As he began to move, a golden arrow cutting through the bustling crowd, his powerful legs weaving deftly between the excited students, his nose low to the linoleum floor. His trajectory was unerring. He moved with a purpose, an unwavering focus that was chilling to witness. His path led him straight to the serving counter, and then he stopped. His gaze, unblinking, fixed on a single tray of mac and cheese, destined for Ms. Eleanor Vance's third-grade class. And then it came, a low, guttural growl, so deep it vibrated through the floor. It was a primordial sound, entirely out of character for the usually gentle Labrador, a sound that sliced through the cafeteria's lively chatter like a cleaver through silence, silencing every child at the nearest table mid-chew. Max took a step forward, his body coiled, and then he barked. It wasn't a playful bark or an excited one, it was sharp, urgent, a clear command, a desperate plea for immediate action aimed directly at that innocent-looking tray. Just inches away, little Chloe, a girl with a tiny medical alert bracelet for her severe nut allergy, stood at the head of the line, her small hand already reaching, her eyes alight with the promise of her favorite lunch. Officer Jenkins, his training kicking in, reacted instantly. He grabbed Max's leash, raised a calming hand to the room, and his voice, though firm, carried no panic. "Everyone stay calm. Teachers, please move the kids toward the far end of the cafeteria." Principal Anya Sharma, a woman whose calm demeanor usually commanded respect, rushed to his side, her brow furrowed with concern. "What's going on, Officer Jenkins? Everything looks fine." It's a natural human tendency, isn't it? To dismiss what isn't immediately visible, to trust our eyes over an unseen threat. But Officer Jenkins's eyes were locked on his partner. "I don't know yet, Principal. but he's telling us something's wrong." Max barked again, a staccato demand, and pawed frantically at the serving counter leg. That's when it happened. Miss Beatrice B. Davies, a cafeteria worker who had served generations of Maplewood children, seemed to crumple where she stood. The serving spoon clattered to the floor like a death knell, and she brought a trembling hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with a dawning, terrible horror. "B?" Principal Sharma's voice was gentle, but laced with a hint of concern. B's voice was a whisper, barely audible above the sudden, oppressive silence. I didn't. He was just supposed to stir the cheese. I swear I didn't." Her words hung in the air, a chilling premonition. Officer Jenkins cut in, his tone calm but direct. "Ma'am, I need to know exactly who handled that tray." B blinked, her eyes watery. "My nephew. I got him this job. I didn't think. He's had a tough time." Officer Jenkins crouched beside Max, looking closer at the tray. Max wasn't just pointing, he was guarding. His entire body was positioned to block access to the food. He stood, turned to the cafeteria staff, his voice firm. "No one touches anything else. Clear the kitchen, now." Max stayed posted near the tray, an unwavering sentinel. Officer Jenkins quickly called dispatch. "This is Officer Jenkins. I need a hazmat and food safety team at Maplewood Elementary. Possible food tampering. K9 alert on a serving tray." No one injured yet. It begs the question, how did Max know? Officer Jenkins would later explain. Dogs like Max don't just smell food. They smell shifts, in chemicals, emotional residue, even intent. Think about it. We've all heard stories of dogs detecting cancer in their owners, or predicting epileptic seizures. Their olfactory senses are thousands of times more powerful than ours. But beyond mere scent, there's a subtle, almost spiritual connection, a sensitivity to the unseen energies around us. How many times have we had that gut feeling, that whisper of intuition, only to dismiss it because it didn't make logical sense? We're taught to trust our eyes, our minds, the tangible. But sometimes, the most profound truths are found in the unseen, heard only by those willing to listen, beyond the obvious. Max was a living, breathing testament to that. Within 30 minutes, the cafeteria was a sterile zone, sealed off from the world outside. Students were safely back in their classrooms. A few parents, gripped by a quiet terror, called to pick up their children early. The Department of Health was en route, a stark reminder of the gravity of the situation. Officer Jenkins remained in the gym with Max, whose demeanor had shifted back to calm, but still watchful. His eyes never strayed from the kitchen entrance, as if anticipating another unseen threat. Principal Sharma paced nearby, her earlier composure frayed. I don't get it. How could he have known? There's no smell. I mean, you saw the food, it looked fine." Officer Jenkins didn't look away from his partner. "That's the thing about dogs like Max. They smell what we can't. Emotions, changes in chemicals, even intent." Principal Sharma swallowed hard. "Intent?" He nodded. "If something in that tray was made with anger, hate, or even carelessness, he picks it up every time." At 3:12 p.m. the call came in. The food in that particular tray, marked for Miss Eleanor Vance's third-grade class, tested positive for an artificial additive. An additive, later identified as syntheallergen XX, could trigger anaphylactic shock in children with nut allergies. It had no business being in a school kitchen. It wasn't part of the official ingredient list, and someone had put it there. Whether it was intentional or a cruel joke, the outcome could have been fatal. Max had stopped it. Outside, news cameras were already rolling. Officer Jenkins kept his distance while Principal Sharma addressed the press, her voice trembling but firm. "He's a dog," she said, "but he's more than that. He's instinct, he's protection. And today, he was our voice of reason when no one else noticed something was wrong." Max sat calmly next to her, his head slightly tilted as if confused by the attention. He didn't care about the cameras. He only cared that his kids were safe. The school fell quiet. Parents had taken their kids home early. Lunch trays still sat where they'd been left, untouched. The hallway lights buzzed softly in the silence, echoing off the tile like a metronome counting down the moment everything had almost gone wrong. Like the worry that everything had almost gone. Officer Jenkins stood at the front office window, a paper cup of lukewarm coffee in his hand. Max rested on the cool floor beside him, head on his paws, still alert despite the stillness. Across from them sat B. Davies, the longtime cafeteria cook, her hands clasped together like a used dish rag. Her eyes were red, her voice dry from hours of worry. Officer Jenkins had seen this look before. People who knew something, people who carried guilt they didn't know how to explain. "I should have said something," she whispered. "I should have told someone." Officer Jenkins kept his tone calm. "Told someone what?" Bee looked up at him, ashamed. "About my nephew, about how he's been changing." Officer Jenkins sat beside her, careful not to crowd. "Take your time," he said. "Tell me everything." His name was Marcus Davies, 19. He'd dropped out of community college, been living with Bee for the last 6 months after some problems at home that no one in the family liked to talk about. Bee had gotten him the cafeteria job through a temp agency. The school had needed extra help during the lunch rush. Bee had vouched for him. He seemed okay, she said. Quiet but respectful, always wore his gloves. Never complained. "But then I started noticing things," she continued. "Ingredients missing, the fridge left open. Once, I found him staring out the window at the kids like he was miles away." She paused, glancing down at Max. "And then today, when I saw him near the tray, his hands were shaking. I asked if he was okay. He just nodded and walked out the back." Officer Jenkins frowned. Did he say anything? Leave anything behind? He shook her head. Just this look in his eyes, like he knew what he'd done, or what was about to happen. Officer Jenkins stood and called the station. "I need an address for Marcus Davies, possible suspect in a food tampering case. Get a unit to secure the residence. I'm heading there now." Max rose to his feet, instantly alert. The Davies house sat at the edge of an older suburb, one-story ranch style, cracked driveway, mailbox hanging by one screw. Officer Jenkins knocked twice. No answer. He glanced down at Max. The dog sniffed the air, tail low, body tense. "Let's try the back." They rounded the side yard, stepping through dry leaves and a collapsed wooden gate. As they reached the rear patio, Max let out a quiet growl and lowered his body to a crouch. Officer Jenkins spotted the figure through the sliding glass door. Marcus was inside, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, headphones on, staring blankly at a turned-off TV. On the coffee table in front of him sat an open lunch tray, the same kind used at the school. Officer Jenkins tapped the glass. Marcus didn't move. "Police?" Officer Jenkins said, loud enough to be heard. Still nothing. Officer Jenkins slowly opened the unlocked door, hand on his holstered sidearm. Max followed behind, poised but controlled. "Marcus," Officer Jenkins said calmly, "we need to talk." The young man finally looked up, pale face, dark circles under his eyes, trembling hands. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," he said. Officer Jenkins didn't speak. He let the silence hang. "I just wanted them to know how it feels," Marcus continued. "To be invisible, to be pushed around. Those kids, they don't care who's behind the counter, they make fun, they throw food, they laugh when they think no one's listening." He gestured toward the tray. "It was just a little powder, something I bought online, not even dangerous unless someone's allergic." "It's just flavor enhancer beta 9, Marcus confessed, his voice barely a whisper. "They said it makes things taste more. I thought it would just make them feel a little off, a little uncomfortable, like I always feel." Officer Jenkins replied, his voice flat. "There are kids at that school with peanut allergies, egg allergies. Even small exposures can send them into shock. You knew that?" Marcus's lips trembled. "I didn't think it would get that far." "But it could have," Officer Jenkins said, "and the only reason it didn't was because a dog smelled what you were trying to hide." Marcus looked at Max, and for a moment something like guilt washed over his face. "I'm sorry." Officer Jenkins sighed. "You don't need to tell me that, you need to tell it to the parents." At the station later that evening, Officer Jenkins filled out the report while Max dozed under his desk. Marcus had been taken into custody without resistance. The charge would likely be reckless endangerment, possibly more, depending on the final lab results and school district decision, but for now, the threat was over. Still, Officer Jenkins couldn't shake the feeling that this story wasn't just about poison or revenge, it was about being seen or not. It's a profound, heartbreaking truth that sometimes the most dangerous silence isn't the absence of noise, but the absence of someone truly listening. The day after Marcus's arrest, the atmosphere at Maplewood Elementary was tense but determined. Teachers welcomed students back with extra smiles. The janitorial staff cleaned the cafeteria twice over, a meticulous scrubbing meant to erase not just germs but lingering fear. Principal Sharma stood by the front doors, greeting every child by name, a beacon of reassurance. But even with the school's best efforts, a quiet unease lingered in the hallways. Kids whispered about the lunch tray thing. Parents clung to their children a little tighter, their smiles thinner, their eyes scanning the hallways for phantom threats. The quiet hum of apprehension was palpable, a chilling counterpoint to the children's still vibrant innocence. Officer Jenkins knew that question was only half the problem. The other half, why no one said anything sooner, was what stuck with him as he parked his cruiser in front of a small white bungalow on Laurel Street later that afternoon. Max sat in the passenger seat, ears up. "You remember this place, bud?" Officer Jenkins asked, rubbing the back of the Labrador's neck. Max gave a soft whine in response. This was where B. Davies lived. She hadn't been charged with anything. Technically, she hadn't committed a crime, but the district had placed her on administrative leave pending further investigation. Officer Jenkins could tell from her face the day before that this wasn't just guilt by association. There was something else. Something deeper. He walked up the porch steps and knocked gently. A moment later, B opened the door. Her eyes were puffy. She looked like she hadn't slept. "You're not here to arrest me, are you?" she asked, managing a weak smile. Officer Jenkins shook his head. "No, ma'am, just want to talk." B stepped aside. "You and Max are always welcome here." The inside of her house was tidy but tired. Faded floral curtains framed photos of grandchildren on the mantel. A faint scent of lemon cleaner hung in the air. A crock-pot simmered quietly in the kitchen, but B didn't move to check it. She gestured to the living room. "Please, sit." Max curled up near the coffee table, eyes never straying far from the front door. Officer Jenkins accepted a seat on the worn couch. "I've been going over everything," B said after a long silence, "trying to figure out where I went wrong." Officer Jenkins leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You didn't poison anyone, B." "No," she said, "but I let someone walk into that kitchen with pain in his heart, and I pretended it wasn't there." Officer Jenkins stayed quiet. She looked down at her hands. "Marcus's dad, my oldest son, he left years ago. Drugs, jail, in and out. Marcus bounced around. Lived with his mom, then his aunt, then back with me. Always quiet, always keeping his head down." She shook her head slowly. "But lately, I started noticing changes. Not just in how he talked, but how he didn't talk. He'd come home and sit in the dark. One night I found him shredding papers. Old birthday cards. Drawings he made in elementary school." Officer Jenkins frowned. "Was he ever in counseling?" "We tried. He hated it. Said nobody ever listened anyway." B took a shaky breath. "So, when the school needed extra help, and he needed something to do, I thought this might help. A purpose, a routine. Kids are good for the soul, you know." Officer Jenkins nodded. "But he didn't see it that way," she continued. "He saw it as another place where he didn't belong, where people smiled at him but never really saw him. He told me once, 'People treat you better when they know your name. I wear a hairnet. I don't even have a name tag.'" Officer Jenkins sat back, letting that land. "He told me he didn't mean to hurt anyone," Officer Jenkins said after a moment. "But that's the thing with hurt. It doesn't stay where you put it, it spreads." B nodded slowly. "I know. That's why I wanted to ask something. Not as a cook, not as a witness, just as a grandma." Officer Jenkins looked up. "Do you think he's evil?" Officer Jenkins blinked. "No, I don't. I think he's broken, and broken people don't need punishment first. They need someone who's not afraid to stand next to the mess." She exhaled, deep and full of sadness, and maybe, finally, a little relief. "I'm not asking you to fix it," she said. "Just don't let him be forgotten. That's all I ask." Officer Jenkins nodded once. "I'll do my best." Back at the station, Officer Jenkins typed up his final report for the incident. He wrote it plainly. He didn't dramatize, but he made sure to include Max's role in detail, how the K-9 had identified the tampered tray, remained in a protective stance, and signaled the danger without fail. He ended it with a line he rarely used in official documents. "The actions of K-9 Unit Max prevented a potential mass casualty event. His instincts and training should be recognized not only as heroic but as necessary." Captain Linda Vargas stopped by his desk as he hit send. "Heard you handled that school case better than most would have." Officer Jenkins shrugged. It was Max.
Linda smiled. Still, you listen to your dog. That's not nothing. Officer Jenkins smiled back. He's usually the smart one anyway. This entire narrative arc is crucial. It highlights that the villain often isn't born of pure evil, but of systemic neglect, of unaddressed pain. It speaks to the burden of silence that many from disadvantaged backgrounds carry, the feeling of being unseen, and it offers a powerful message. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply to see and listen to those who feel invisible. The next week, the school board hosted a closed-door meeting. Officer Jenkins didn't expect to be invited, but he showed up anyway, sitting in the back in uniform, Max at his feet. Toward the end, Principal Sharma stood and requested to speak. There's been a lot of talk about liability, policies, and background checks, she said, her voice steady. And those things matter, but what matters more, at least to me, is that a child didn't end up in the hospital because a dog followed his instincts.
She paused, looking directly at the board members. And that a woman who's fed this community's children for over 20 years had the courage to speak when it mattered most. She made a mistake, but she didn't ignore it. She came forward. She gestured to the back of the room. I recommend B. Davies be given the option to retire with full honors. The room murmured in agreement. Officer Jenkins exhaled slowly. Max let out a soft huff beside him as if sensing the shift. A week later, a modest ceremony was held in the school courtyard. B, dressed in her Sunday best, received a plaque with her name etched beneath the words, "A Legacy of Service." Officer Jenkins stood nearby with Max, who wore his polished vest and a brand-new silver tag that read, Max, Guardian of Maplewood. Students, with wide, trusting eyes, placed thank-you notes at his paws. One of them, a little girl named Chloe, with a medical alert bracelet for her asthma, hugged him tightly and whispered, "Thank you for smelling the scary stuff." Officer Jenkins' voice caught when he read that note later that night. As the sun dipped behind the trees, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Officer Jenkins grilled chicken on the porch. Max waited patiently by the door, his tail thumping a soft rhythm against the wood. "You keep doing that thing where you smell what the rest of us can't," Officer Jenkins said, "and I'll keep trying to understand the stuff you already figured out." Max tilted his head as if in agreement. And somewhere, in the glow of quiet forgiveness and second chances, the world felt a little safer. 3 weeks after the incident at Maplewood Elementary, something unexpected began happening in schools across the county. Phone calls, emails, letters from parents. Not complaints, requests. "Can Max visit our school? Would Officer Jenkins be willing to talk to our students about what happened? Can we start a K-9 safety program at Lincoln Elementary too?"
It started with Maria Sanchez, a single mom from Crestwood, who wrote on Facebook about how Chloe, her son with a severe peanut allergy, now slept better at night knowing a dog out there could smell danger before anyone else could even see it. The post exploded, echoing across social media platforms like a digital wildfire, shared over 10,000 times in a week. The story quietly went national. Max had become a symbol, not just of safety, but of something deeper, instinct, trust, and listening to the quiet things that get overlooked.
Officer Jenkins hadn't planned to start any sort of program. He and Max had been back to their regular schedule, routine patrols, occasional school visits, and late-night paperwork with stale gas station coffee. But when the school board called and asked if he'd help launch a pilot safety and empathy program, he didn't hesitate. They called it Pause for Connection, a rotating program where K-9 teams would visit schools, not just to do demonstrations, but to build real human relationships, to teach students about awareness, inclusion, and how animals like Max could sense emotions humans often missed. "I'm no teacher," Officer Jenkins had told Principal Sharma, who was coordinating the launch. She smiled. "That's okay, Max is." Their first presentation was at Lincoln Elementary, a school just 2 towns over. Officer Jenkins stood in front of a packed gym with Max beside him, both of them framed by a banner that read, "Heroes come in all shapes, some walk on 4 legs." He wasn't nervous, but it wasn't just a normal talk either. "I'm not here to tell you how to be safe," he began, his voice clear and resonant. "I'm here to show you how to pay attention." He walked slowly, letting the kids stay engaged. 3 weeks ago, Max smelled something wrong in a lunch tray. Not because it looked funny, not because anyone told him. He just knew. He gestured down to the dog, who sat calmly beside him. He knew, because he was trained to trust his instincts. Because he listens to the world the way most of us don't. Officer Jenkins scanned the crowd. Fourth graders, fifth graders, some already whispering to each other. But here's the thing, he added. You don't have to be a dog to do that. You just have to care. He shared a few pages from anonymous notes students had written after the Maplewood incident, some from kids who had food allergies, others from kids who felt invisible at school. One note read, I used to sit by myself at lunch. Now someone sits with me. Maybe that's because of the dog. The room was silent. Then someone clapped. Then another. Max barked once, perfectly timed, and the place erupted in applause. Back in the teacher's lounge afterward, Officer Jenkins leaned against the counter, sipping lukewarm coffee while Max rested under the sink. Principal Barnes, a younger woman with cropped hair and smart glasses, sat across from him. Not bad for a guy who says he's not a teacher, she said. Officer Jenkins shrugged. It's the dog, I'm just the guy who drives him around. You know what I liked, she said. You didn't just talk about safety, you talked about seeing people. That matters more than ever now. Officer Jenkins nodded. That's what this whole thing was about, Marcus Davies. He wasn't trying to be a monster, he just didn't know how to be seen. Principal Barnes was quiet for a moment, then said, We've got a few kids like that here. Officer Jenkins raised an eyebrow. Every school does. She smiled. So, when can we book you again? This section truly showcases the transformative power of one heroic act. It's a compelling narrative, demonstrating that even from tragedy, profound change can emerge. It champions the idea that empathy and listening are not just soft skills, but vital tools for building a safer, more connected community. The shift from a single canine unit to a statewide initiative provides a clear plot progression and illustrates the ripple effect of positive change. Over the next few weeks, the Pause for Connection program grew faster than anyone expected. A local news station ran a feature titled, Canine Saves Lives and Starts a Movement. Max got his own segment, complete with slow-motion footage of him running across a school field, tail wagging, ears perked. Officer Jenkins hated seeing himself on camera. Max didn't seem to mind. What surprised Officer Jenkins most wasn't the attention, it was the change. Teachers began noticing quieter kids speaking up. Cafeteria workers were greeted with good mornings instead of silence. More parents got involved. One dad even volunteered to repaint the staff break room, just because it felt like the right thing to do. It was like the school itself had woken up.
Then came the invitation Officer Jenkins didn't expect. We'd like you to speak at the State Education Board conference in Albany.
Officer Jenkins stared at the email on his phone, blinking. I'm just a patrol officer, he said to Max, who tilted his head. I don't even like public speaking. He thought about deleting the email. Then he thought about Chloe, the little girl who was almost a victim. B, the grandmother who finally spoke up. Marcus, the teen who got lost. And every student now paying attention to things that didn't get talked about before. He hit reply. Yes. Max and I will be there. The day of the speech, the room was filled with suits, PowerPoints, and expensive coffee, not Officer Jenkins' usual crowd. But he stood behind the podium, Max at his side, and told them the story from the beginning. Not about the tray, not about the chemical, but about the bark that no one expected, and how that single bark had started a chain reaction of awareness, healing, and action. You want safer schools? Officer Jenkins told them, his voice gaining confidence with each word. Start with paying attention to the quietest kids, the quietest corners. And if you're lucky, listen to the dog. He finished to a standing ovation. Max barked once. Perfect timing again. That night, Officer Jenkins drove home with the windows down, letting the cool autumn air fill the cruiser. Max leaned his head out the backseat window, ears flapping. Officer Jenkins laughed softly. You know you're a celebrity now? Max didn't react, just stared out at the road, as if already looking for the next thing nobody else could smell. 6 months later, the echoes of that single bark were still rippling across New York State. Officer Jenkins sat quietly at a long table inside a high school gym in Syracuse, flipping through a notebook filled with questions written by middle school students. Max sat at his feet, watching the kids file in row by row, his ears perked and tail low but wagging. The Pause for Connection program had grown beyond anything Officer Jenkins ever expected. It started with a rescue, then a speech, then a second school. Now it was a statewide initiative funded and endorsed by the Department of Education, bringing canine teams into schools for safety awareness, emotional support, and empathy building. Max wasn't just a police dog anymore, he was an ambassador for listening. The assembly began with a few words from the principal. Officer Jenkins stood quietly until introduced, then walked to the center of the court, microphone in hand, Max beside him. "I'm Officer David Jenkins, this is Max, and we're here because 6 months ago," he barked. There was a ripple of laughter, but only because the room had no idea what was coming next. Officer Jenkins explained the story again. The school lunch tray, the chemical compound, the child with a nut allergy who never knew how close they'd come to disaster. The cafeteria worker's tears, the nephew's confession, and the truth behind the bark that broke the silence. And then he turned serious. "You know what scares me more than any chemical compound, more than any malicious act?" he asked, his gaze sweeping across the faces. "Silence. The silence of unspoken pain, the silence of unheard cries." He took a breath. Max didn't bark because he knew the ingredients, he barked because something felt wrong. He paid attention when the rest of us didn't. Officer Jenkins knelt and scratched Max behind the ears. "And that's what I want you to take away from this. Pay attention. Trust your gut. Be the person who hears the thing nobody else is listening for." There was a stillness in the gym that only real truth could create. Then came applause. Not loud, not frantic, just honest. After the event, Officer Jenkins helped a group of students pet Max, answering their questions one by one. Some wanted to know about training. Others asked if dogs could smell sadness. A few asked if they could grow up to work with animals like Max. One girl, maybe 10, held a sketch pad in her hand and stood a few feet away until everyone else had gone. Officer Jenkins smiled at her. "Hey there, what's your name?" "Chloe," she said. "Want to meet Max?" She nodded and approached slowly, then held out her sketch pad. On the page was a hand-drawn picture. Max, standing between two lunch tables, his nose pointed at a steaming tray, flames around the edges of the drawing. "That's really good," Officer Jenkins said, stunned by the detail. She looked down. "I was, one of the kids who was supposed to eat that lunch." Officer Jenkins's heart dropped. Chloe continued, her voice quiet. "I have a peanut allergy. Real bad. My mom says if I had eaten that food, I might have—" She trailed off. Officer Jenkins put a hand on her shoulder. "You're here because Max barked, and because of that your story isn't over, you still get to write it." Chloe smiled faintly, then knelt beside Max and wrapped her arms around him. "He's my hero," she whispered. Officer Jenkins didn't say anything, he didn't need to. That night, Officer Jenkins sat on his porch with a blanket over his legs, the early autumn air already starting to bite. Max lay beside him on the wooden floorboards, chewing gently on a rubber toy shaped like a badge. Officer Jenkins held a letter in his hands. This one was from Marcus Davies, now in a court-ordered rehabilitation program upstate. "Officer Jenkins, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I've been going to counseling. I read a story about Max in the newspaper. They called him a guardian of empathy. That got me thinking. If a dog can care that much about people, maybe I can learn how to do the same. I'm trying to get it right now. Thank you for stopping me before it was too late. Sincerely, Marcus Davies." Officer Jenkins read the letter twice, then set it down and looked at Max. "Guess we're not just catching bad guys anymore, huh?" Max thumped his tail once, eyes steady, as if to say, "We never were." A month later, Maplewood Elementary held a dedication ceremony. Not for a statue, not for a building, but for a garden, planted just outside the cafeteria. A winding path led through flowers planted by students, with names like Hope, Trust, and Second Chances painted on stones along the trail. In the center was a bronze plaque on a short post. It read, "In honor of K-9 Officer Max, who heard what others missed and reminded us all to listen." Officer Jenkins didn't cry in public, but that day he almost did, especially when B. Davies, recently retired, stood beside him and said, "He didn't just save lives, he gave us back our ears." Later that week, Officer Jenkins spoke at a small town hall. No cameras, no press, just parents. He told the story again, simpler this time. Then he said something he hadn't written down. Something that came from watching Max over the past 6 months. "I think most of the danger in this world doesn't come from evil. It comes from overlooking, from brushing things off, from choosing not to look twice, from thinking it's not my problem." But when a dog barks, when your gut screams a warning, when a silent soul reaches out, you don't argue. you pay attention. Because maybe, just maybe, being human means learning to be a little more like Max sometimes. The smallest sound, one bark, one word, one whisper, can stop something terrible from happening. But only if someone is willing to hear it. Pay attention to what feels off. Trust your instincts. And most importantly, be the person who listens when no one else does. If Max's story touched your heart, if it made you think about the quiet whispers we often miss, then I encourage you to do something powerful. Hit that like button. It helps us share these vital messages with more people who need to hear them. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story of everyday heroes. And most importantly, leave a comment below. What's your story of listening to your gut? When did you pay attention to something others overlooked, and how did it make a difference? Share your experiences. Let's build a community where every voice is heard and every silent cry finds an ear. Because just like Max, we all have the power to protect, to inspire, and to connect.